So once we get to a board, the government has the burden of proving by preponderance of the evidence that the misconduct that's alleged actually occurred. And that's what's called a basis for misconduct. So at these BOIs, there's a couple different steps. The board's first task is to determine if the misconduct occurred. And you'll hear that as known as, was there a basis for misconduct? Again, the burden is on the government to prove by a preponderance of evidence, which is 51% or more. It's the same standard that's used at civil trials or at family court. It's much lower than beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's still preponderance of evidence standard, so they can't just mail it in. The government has to prove that you actually committed the misconduct that they've accused you of committing. And the board members make findings. Now, how does the government go about doing that? Well, it depends on how strong the government team is. And then it's not called a prosecutor, they're called a recorder, but they oftentimes use prosecutors in these cases, or they'll use JAGs to do it. What they'll typically do is if the commanding general issued you a GOMAR and that was permanently filed, they'll use that to form the basis. They'll say, well, the commanding general already looked at this. The commanding general already determined that the misconduct happened. Fine. And you need to find that the misconduct happened. They use that as the basis. So sometimes we'll have boards where the prosecutor doesn't call any witnesses. They'll just put on a paper case. And when they do that, I mean, that's a huge benefit for us. I mean, when that happens, I don't want to say nothing's a guaranteed win, but when they do that, we know we've probably got them because you typically need to do more than put a paper. If you're going to try to kick a lieutenant colonel or a major or a W3 out of the military, these board members are expecting a whole hell of a lot more than a piece of paper or a paper trail. And these cases where these prosecutors or these recorders just kind of wing it and mail it in, we go in there and absolutely destroy them. So that's not every case, but in some cases they call out witnesses, but it's their burden to prove that there's a basis for the misconduct. If the board members find that there is no basis for misconduct or the misconduct did not happen, the board's over. Your name is clear, the board's over. Then the beautiful part of that is there is a findings and there's a record of that proceedings. And oftentimes you can take that record of that proceeding at the board that found that you did not commit the misconduct or found that the government did not prove you committed the misconduct by preponderance of evidence, and use that at the BCMR, which is the Board of Corrections for Military Records, and try to have your GOMAR removed. So let me give you a great scenario. You have a GOMAR that's placed in your file. Let's say you hired an attorney or you drafted a response and no one read it or they didn't give it the time of day, and your GOMAR was permanently filed. We see this happen all the time. Then it goes to a BOI or to a show cause board. The board members find by preponderance of the evidence that the misconduct did not happen. Because now you have this interesting thing which has occurred. You have a reprimand in your file signed off on by a 1-star, a 2-star, or a 3-star saying you committed this offense and you committed this misconduct. And on the other hand, you have a board or a 3-panel board which took evidence, heard closing arguments, have the ability to obtain evidence. This fact-finding board came back with written findings of fact saying you didn't commit this misconduct. And now you have, which one is it? And so now you're in a beautiful position to go back to the BCMR, which is the Board of Corrections for Military Records, and petition to have that GOMAR removed. And that's something that you will need to do to get that GOMAR removed or that letter of reprimand removed out of your file if you want to have any chance of promoting or advancing, because that's always going to be in your file. So winning it out of board doesn't remove the negative paperwork, but you can use their record of trial, you can use the findings to submit those to the BCMR and try to have that removed out of your file. So that's another piece of this too. If you've been notified of an administrative separation board or a BOI, I want you to understand that you can absolutely fight this, regardless of whether your GOMAR was permanently filed or you were previously found guilty at NJP or Article 15. If you have a right to a board, get in front of these board members and fight. You can win these cases at a board. We do this routinely. If you want to have a conversation about how to do that, give me a call, 813-669-3500, or look at the information we have on our website, www.bileckilawgroup.com.